Um, Want to welcome everybody here today, and we're really, grateful and excited that you all agreed to join us for this conversation. My name is Jeremy Fields. I'm the director at Ituhku Curative Community Culture, and I'm joined today here by my esteemed colleague and co-host, our clinical director, Inel Miranda.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for sharing this time and space with us. My name is Inel Miranda. I am the clinical director, a licensed professional counselor with the Ituhku Curative Community Culture. And we wanted to share space with you all because part of our effort is really to focus on creating and promoting healthy communities. And being inclusive is one of the most important aspects of creating a healthy community anywhere. We understand the value and the healing that comes from being a part of a healthy community, that it actually provides an opportunity for people to address and heal from any kind of trauma and any kind of discomfort or problems that they're having in their lives. So we want to make sure that part of our effort includes, a variety of voices because all contributions help to create and maintain that healthy community. So we really appreciate you joining us today and in some ways helping us in this effort. So thank you all for choosing to participate. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. A little bit here about our organization. We're a new nonprofit organization, and what we encompass and what we're centered around is a virtual community of guidance and support. Over 3 decades worth of direct service to Native communities, we've kind of identified a lot of the shortfalls and the gaps that often exist in terms of services that are available in terms of mental and behavioral health for our communities. And at the same time, too, through that direct experience, we've learned the power and the value of community in terms of healing and the medicine that comes from just being in that healthy space of community where you're accepted and there's belonging, and going hand in hand with that, we have to learn to recreate spaces for diversity in our communities. As many of you know, there are a lot of colonized mindsets that have taken root in our communities as well. And those are things that we need to bring awareness to and bring valued perspective like yours to be able to open up people's minds and have them, gain a better understanding of what our communities encompass. I know that there are a lot of misconceptions out there and a lot of misunderstandings surrounding our Two Spirit relatives and the LGBTQ plus relatives. And we wanted to facilitate this conversation today just to kind of get some honest perspective of your experiences, maybe some of the challenges or misconceptions that you faced, and get an idea of what it is that we can do collectively as community to create safe space and to, create a space for belonging, and how it is that we can support your efforts in the way that you're needing that safe space and wanting to find a place to thrive within community. I think this is a largely collective journey where we're all trying to understand what this means, being able to return to a space of healthy community. In present day times, in many senses, we use that word. Uh, I want to say a little bit haphazardly sometimes because we think about people that live in a local area, but in our traditional understanding of community, it's about the relationships that exist there, the understanding, the care for one another's well-being. And a lot of times in today's society, with technology and this fast-paced world, a lot of times those relationships go overlooked. But that's kind of what we're about and what we're wanting to facilitate. And we're in the process of building this virtual community, and this is one of our first opportunities to really connect with community. And we wanted to take advantage of Pride Month here to be able to share our platform and amplify your voices as well. But I guess with that being said, let's go ahead and have you guys introduce yourself, share a little bit about where you're from, who you are so that we can kind of get to know you a little bit. And I think we can start with Richard.
I wasn't trying to be first. Just kidding. Hi everybody. My name is I go by Ricky Sheridan. I'm an enrolled member of the Omaha Tribe of Nebraska, and I'm also Winnebago from Nebraska.
Mhm.
Um, 40 years old. I am an educator here on my reservation, and I am also a high school cheerleading coach. Um, in my spare time, I one of my main hobbies during the summer is to perform in the drag arts.
Mhm.
Um, I've been doing that for the last 14 years, I believe. I travel around the Midwest area to perform in various shows and prides, and I used to run in national pageants, but since then I kind of retired from that. Just kind of focusing on my career as an educator in my community. Um, I live in a rural area on my reservation. I believe it's probably about maybe less than 2,000 people in my community. I consider myself a really big advocate in the LGBT community, the 2S community here, because I um, don't hide who I am in my community, and my community, I feel like, respects that. Though being an educator, I do not talk about any of my outside activities with any of my students, but I do create a safe space for them in my classroom and in the community because a lot of people know what I do outside of school. Um, yeah, I have 9 siblings. Um, four of the nine are part of the LGBT community as well. Um, yeah, that's all I got so far.
Okay, well, thank you. And then we can jump over to Jana.
Hi, I'm gonna introduce myself in my language. Shortly, Jenna Johnson Oji, Bashrank Og Watson Easley. Hello, my name is Jenna Johnson, and I am from Arctic Village, Alaska, but I make my home here in Oregon with my partner. Um, my tribe is the native village of Unified Tribal Government. In our reservation, I don't remember how much, it's 1.5 or 1.8 million acres. Um, but yeah, I've been a part of a committee for about 7 years now. I started as a youth representative for youth and young adult services for years, and then like 2 years ago, um, I was asked to become a LGBTQ representative, so that's pretty much what I do now. I travel the world about once a year, but I haven't been able to just because I've been super busy recently. But that's really the only work that I've done was just go to these meetings and talk about like like me and what like how I can represent that to my community and make a safe space for all. Um, but yeah, the whole committee is targeted or basically for youth and young adults struggling with like substance abuse, suicide, and alcohol abuse. But yeah, it's pretty much all I've been doing.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say just or all. That's powerful work, and thank you for your contribution. Let's see here. Let's jump to Alex. Are you able to unmute or turn on your camera?
Okay, can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, yeah. Welcome, welcome.
Sweet, sweet. Yeah, so I guess you just want me to introduce myself and all that. Sorry about being
Yeah,
late.
yeah. Absolutely. No, no, you're fine.
For sure. So, yeah, my name is Alex DeRoyne. I am an Osage, Oto, Pawnee, Blackfeet descendant. I am a shareholder of the Osage Minerals Estate, and I identify as Indigiqueer or Two Spirit. In our language, we call that Mechoge. And I'm culturally involved. Actually, just now coming back from our lunch dances, they kind of fit in everything in the middle of all these different things. So excuse my ruggedness right now, eh? But but anyway, so yeah, my professional career, I work for my tribe's rehab. They call it PRT. It's Primary Residential Treatment Facility. I am a member of Wellbriety. I'm an artist. I've been making art for the past 3 years now. I've been showing in several galleries, showing in museum spaces. Recently at the Walking in Our Ancestors' Footsteps exhibit in Nebraska with the Otos. So I recently did that. I am a activist, advocate for 2S LGBTQIA plus community members, and I am also an awarded water protector. Here in Oklahoma, we have been front lines in defending our nation and our relatives, our more than human relatives, from data centers and all those different things. So I've had to step up and also speak out for water and water sovereignty in the Osage Nation. So we're starting in a lot of different ways. Recently got a moratorium passed here in Pawhuska for a whole year. So I managed to get that done. And I have made a zine for the Osage Nation talking about Osage relationality to water. Very recently, I am kind of going in this endeavor of exploring queer ecology through my art and really tying two-spirit identity to these more than human relatives that exist on our homelands. One of the things that I really get into right now, and I grow, I'm a gardener too, I'm a traditional seed carrier. So one of the things I've been doing is helping out my people with understanding stories and finding relationships again with a lot of our medicines that we had, especially medicines that are that exist outside the binary and binary understanding. That's like plants like corn that has a male and a female organ on the same body, you know, and all those kinds of things to kind of show that we have always been here and that people like us have always kissed this earth. And I kind of talk about that through my art and express that through my art. My art movement that I've started is called Land Dada, or Land Dada in my language. It's a mixture of neo Dada aesthetics, which is basically this movement that's all about recontextualizing what art is and being very radical in the way you express things. So I merge those kind of old aesthetics with my word and my language, Dada, which is it's asking what, you know, it's being very interrogatory. It's asking somebody to explain themselves so that I can try to empathize with them in that way. So, you know, I do everything in a very culturally grounded way. I go to my NAC services here, Native American Church services, and that's kind of where I keep myself grounded, you know, as a two-spirit person, because I understand that, you know, as a two-spirit person and as an Osage person too, like there's a lot of, you know, I'm very communal in the way I do things, and my gender expression is very communal too. So, you know, I try to make sure I give back and I provide back and try to make myself useful in a lot of ways that I can, because I realize the more I do that, the more I build a future where children like myself can be more free in their expressions and do all those things. So I focus more on rural Oklahoma areas. I'm also a founder of a nonprofit called Kinship Model, and I am on a board of Tulsa Two Spirit too, which is an organization creating third spaces for indigenous queer people to come find other people, socialize, have talking circles, and do all those good things too. So thank you for being
Wow.
here. Thankful for the opportunity.
Absolutely. You know, I think too, just with everything you've got going on, thank you for making time for us. You sound like you're pretty busy, and that's all inspiring work that all of you do. I'm really grateful that we've got some powerful individuals here to kind of share perspective. Let's see. For our other guests that are here, do you guys want to chime in and introduce yourself? We've got kind of a small, intimate little group here. It'd be nice if we could all just kind of get to know one another really quick before we move forward.
I didn't call my name, sorry. I was driving earlier, but I'm here to support Jana. I coached her in basketball and she posted this link and I was like, all right, I'm in education. I currently
Awesome.
live in Arizona. I'm on mute and gonna not show my video because I have a 2-year-old running around and she just had a meltdown. So I
Oh
don't want to
gosh.
disrupt everyone. But I just love learning and we just love Jana. I've known her since what, 7th grade, Jana? She's like, yeah. And I just love what she's doing and I just want to support her. So thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And then let's go to Rachel.
I am Rachel, and I got Jana's mom here too on my phone, so she can introduce herself next. But Rachel Johnson, I am also here for Jana and also my friend Jeremy. I have known Jana for gosh, it feels like forever, but I guess it's just been a couple of years now that I get to hang out with her sometimes up in Alaska. So. Really happy to be here to support her and everyone else too, and you as well, Jeremy. And let me turn my phone around so you can see Hilda.
Hello, Hilda.
Hi, good afternoon from Arctic Village, Alaska. I am so excited to be here and to support my daughter, Jana. I'm really proud of her and how far she's come. She gets a lot of support from our community and her friends and family, and Arctic Village, our people just really support her, and that makes me really happy. And I'm excited to be here and to listen in on the panel. Masicho.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for blessing us with your presence today. Let's see here. Who do we have left here? Trevi?
Hey y'all, I'm Trevi. That's my chosen artist name. I just got choked up listening to her mom. It's really beautiful. Um, I'm from the Twin Cities, Minneapolis. I'm a roll member of Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and a descendant of Stockbridge Munsee. I'm a drag king. I'm reconfiguring my life and I'm trying to get back into the community. I'm a big supporter of our Two Spirit community here. I just got back from Wisconsin's first ever Two Spirit powwow, and that was amazing. It came together within a year. I'm proud of who I am. I've always been proud of who I am. I'm just learning to be more boisterous about being Two Spirit and who we are and who we've always been. My tribe doesn't have a word for Two Spirit because we were one of the first tribes that was contacted by colonization. And it's been erased from our history. So one of my relatives back home is working on getting a word that fits like each gender role in the Two Spirit. So I'm helping with that, and our Two Spirit powwow is in Minneapolis next week. I'll be I work for a de-escalation company that's based right here in Minneapolis, and I'll be working for the de-escalation company for the powwow.
Okay.
So they have some native representation, making sure that they're safe. But thank y'all for holding this space. This is amazing. Can't wait to learn more.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. We had one other person join, Shannon J. If you'd like to take a quick moment to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with the panel here.
Hi, my name's Shannon Jimmy. My sister is Jana Johnson, so I'm just
Okay.
here to support her.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Well, welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being here. So, you know, I know that from my experience, I over the past, again, 3 decades, I've worked all over Indian country, in and out of communities, working with youth, adults, elders, primarily in the realm of mental and behavioral health. And there's always a large degree of misunderstanding that I come across when it comes to gender identity. And it's kind of interesting because yesterday I was thinking about this, in how when people don't understand something, they automatically kind of revert to a fear-based approach to things, and rather than being able to say I don't know, and being open to ask questions and engage the topic and kind of lean into it, and to try and learn. And what kind of brought that to mind was, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and her name is Iotanla. She's Lakota on her mother's side. And this year, we relocated to, well, we relocated to Oklahoma, where I'm originally from, and the school system that I grew up in Collinsville. And she's one of the only, I don't want to say one of the only native students, but I would say heavily cultured native students in the school system. And she's one of the only ones that has a very unique name like she does. And we ran into a real challenge this year that nobody in the school really wanted to learn her name, none of the teachers or the staff. And, all throughout the year going to the school, I kept running into that. People would ask me, how do you say her name? How do you say her name? And it sounds exactly like it looks in the way that it's written. It's really simple. But because it's different, everybody was afraid to even attempt it. Some of her little friends and of course, her primary teacher learned it. But as many times as I had to engage the office staff and other teachers and things, it was always a challenge. And I saw the effect that it had on her, in a way that she felt singled out, and not as embraced as the other kids in the school, as some of her friends and things. So I can only imagine what it's like on the opposite side of that, when it comes to something more than just a name. Can you all maybe share a little bit about your perspective of maybe how you've encountered that in your own communities, or kind of out in the world, and how has that affected you? Maybe we can start with Jenna.
Sorry, can you repeat your question? I kind of was.
No, you're fine. So, in regards to how maybe you've been misunderstood in communities or out in the world, and how has that experience been for you, and how has it affected you?
Yeah. So growing up in like elementary school or middle school, I was very passionate about learning my language, and I would go to school and like try and figure out how to say a certain word in my language, and then people would kind of look at me and like, what are you saying? Like, you're just speaking gibberish over there. And I honestly, young me, I took much offense to it because it's my language. It's my way to connect to my people and to my land. And so I guess my experience would be just dealing with the frustration and the difficulties of feeling discouraged of learning my language and trying to be public about it, because people are just confused about it right off the bat and take, I don't know, judgment, and they just judge me. And it just discourages me a lot because people, like I said, they make fun of it. They try and copy what I'm trying to say, and they just totally bosh the name. And it makes me even more frustrated because they're not saying it right. And so that would be my experience with the frustration that the world has kind of whatever.
Hmm. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to Ricky.
Yeah, I sorry, I have to stand up. I'm experiencing back problems, but I the only kind of like misconception that I've gotten while growing up is I used to attend um church camps and all of that,
Mm.
where um I get a lot of people saying that our people try to like talk to me in Spanish, or they always ask if I'm Mexican. But then when I ask them, or when I tell them that I'm Native American, they usually go and ask the various stereotypical questions that we actually still kind of endure today. Is like, how do you plug in your TV in your TP? How do you speak language, and do you speak your language in your home? Um, or how do you say this, and this in your language, kind of thing. Um, the only thing that really like gets offensive is like um the stereotypes of like Native Americans still living in teepees and earth lodges and riding horses to and from the stores and all that.
Hmm.
So you're always having to educate people that who don't even realize that Native Americans are still here in the United States. Um, and just recently, because like I said, I'm a high school cheerleading coach. We went to a a basketball game that was located probably like maybe a couple of hours away from where we live, and they asked me where we're from, or then we're the northeast part of Nebraska, or like 2 hours away from here, and they're like, oh, I've never heard of your town before, or where is it? What is it? And I was like, oh, we live on the reservation, and I make that a point. Oh, we live on a reservation. Like, oh, I didn't even know Nebraska still had those. And I'm like, okay. I was like, clearly you didn't learn the history of anything. But that's just like the one misconception that we experience, or that I've experienced recently, is like, oh, I didn't know your reservation is in Nebraska, or I don't know what a reservation is, and pretty much basically made it seem like that we're third world. And it's very frustrating having to do that. So in ways that how I would go through it is, um, as a coach, I even had the our name for our mascot in our language. So every time we wear our cheerleading uniforms, people are like, "Oh, what does that mean on your shirt or on your top?" Or so then that's just us educating everybody who we are and where we come from. So that's one of the things that I've experienced growing up in with our language.
Okay. So I guess as an added layer to this, in regards to maybe ways that you've either been misunderstood in greater society, or even maybe even more so in regards to your cultural community, how has your gender identity played into that? What have you experienced in communities? Have you been embraced, or has it been a challenge to be understood? Let me direct that one to Alex, and then we'll come back to Jenna and Ricky.
Yeah, so you know, for me, that so systems from settler colonialism, because that's kind of what this conversation is about, is how systems of settler colonialism affect our everyday lives and affect our children. You know what I mean? And for me, I feel as though the binary tries to make itself seem natural. And to me, this kind of thing goes back into, how land back goes into conversations. Land back is more than just claiming the land. It's actually about, reviving systems that derive from it. And from people that talk about how, refugee activists, you know what I mean, immigrant activists, they always say the border crossed us, not the other way around. Well, the binary does the same way. It does the same thing to people like us. It tries to impose itself as if it's something natural. And for me, that was always how it began. Whenever I was a child, I just simply was free and was able to live. I listened to songs like Big Girls Don't Cry and sang it on the karaoke machine. And my parents would police me for those kinds of things. that was the earliest examples of me being policed, me using my bodies in certain ways that wasn't considered masculine. And I was policed for it. And it was disguised and masqueraded as an act of love. My parents told me they loved me because they wanted me to be safe. And that's the thing, this goes back into mental health, that especially me, I come from a culture, where we've had to bury our relatives, we've had to bury our objects, our sacred objects. And we survived the reign of terror during that Killers of the Flower Moon movie that everybody knows those stages for right now. So when we have this type of survival method of having to amputate things, we Two Spirit people oftentimes are one of the first things to be amputated, like what's already been said earlier, because what happens is when we need to survive, and settler colonialism superimposes binary structures. They're going to prioritize a male and a female system. And then our people, will adopt those things in order to survive. And that causes those things to be erased. And, when it goes back into mental health in the ways that, when we come from things like boarding schools, when we come from like the silent generation that doesn't really talk about things and they don't want to acknowledge a lot of those things, it creates a systemic, a system of silence where we don't talk, where our Two Spirit relatives don't have the space to actually find each other. And oftentimes, even, they're hidden from us too in the form of like, masqueraded obituaries, whereas a lot of our elders, they don't acknowledge that part of their life at all, or will have their dead name on there. I'm very fortunate to come from a community who did have, queer elders who were very influential in Osage communities. Like we had the first trans woman to run for Osage Congress was Josie Tallchief, and she was on our committee, and she would do a lot of different things. And to this day, people, will call her a him, misuse different pronouns and stuff like that. And then we have men like Bill Sams, who was a gay Catholic, full-blooded Osage man who comes from my district, from Zonzoli district. And he was the last full-blooded Osage to come from us. And, it was kind of a badge of honor to see a gay man be the last full-blooded Osage in that way, especially with the way people valued him. And I think that goes into a lot of these things where, as Indian people, we have to constantly walk different worlds. And when we do that, we have to survive, oftentimes we have to try to negotiate our sovereignty, because that's what being, trans and Two Spirit is. It's an act of sovereignty. You're saying I'm going to identify with something that promotes my existence, not identify with something that's been designed to erase people like me. And and that's self-decision, that's decision making, that's all those different things. So so promoting people like us and creating health, mental health systems to promote people like us and to challenge our states. I mean, like you and I are from Oklahoma. We're in a state where Next Benedict was murdered. That was a child in Owasso that was murdered. It was a Choctaw teenager. And and they were murdered for expressing their ancestral memory. This is indigenous to us. These gender expressions are indigenous to us. They are native to us. They're native to these lands, like I just talked about earlier about these plants. You can see it out there in that world. God made us like that. So, for that to happen, it creates a message in a culture where our erasure is now becoming normalized. And as an Oto person, I had to go across that river, because one of my nephews had their braids cut off from their teachers and Bedrock, because around here in Oklahoma in the Bible Belt, in the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, we are existing right now in a very heteronormative Christian state. And when, we have non-native teachers in these schools trying to promote a certain aesthetic of whiteness, just even men, like straight men can be affected like this. Just up north at Cole Brinks-Plenty, what happened to Cole Brinks-Plenty is proof of that too. Policing of the binary starts policing more than just trans and Two Spirit natives. It eventually trickles down and affects all native expressions, because we are not normal. Our expressions are, quote, queer. And that is, diametrically opposed to the culture that is existent in this, in America and in all these different things. So that's the way that I kind of view it. And for me, that's how it always started as a child. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That was very, very insightful. Let's see, let's go back to Jenna if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, can you repeat your question for me one more time, just so I can answer it like
Yeah,
correctly?
absolutely. So just kind of considering um, gender identity as an added layer to how it is that you're understood either in greater society or in your cultural community. What has your experience been like? Was it something that was embracing, or did you face a lot of challenges in terms of being accepted or understood?
Yeah, for sure. So personally, I've known that I was a part of the LGBTQ plus community since I was in kindergarten. So I was very little, and I knew that I was attracted to the same gender being so small.
Mhm.
And I actually remember my first girl crush. It was this like third grader, and she had like the tomboy haircut, short hair. Didn't really look like a girl, but like deep down, I knew I was a girl. And I'm pretty sure that's why I was so attracted to her. And I remember coming home from school and telling my mom about it, and she's like, "No, you can't do that. You can only like boys because obviously, um, growing up in a Christian household, it's kind of the motto." Um, but being the little like rascal that I was, I continued to go head over heels over this girl. And mind you, again, I was only in kindergarten. I shouldn't have been doing that. But for the record, I'm pretty sure, well, not pretty sure, that ship has definitely sailed because I'm pretty sure my mom loves my girlfriend more than she loves me sometimes. Um, but my mother has come a long way from the beginning, and I'm very grateful for that because obviously she's in this meeting here supporting me and loves me still for who I am. Pretty sure she loves me more now than she has then, since she has continued to support me. Um, I share that part of my story specifically because it shaped how I moved through the world for a very long time. I grew up with traditional teachings that are clear and deeply rooted. Like, our way of life is tied to the land and to each other. Traditionally, the men in my tribe go out and hunt for caribou or for moose or hunt for pretty much anything that we can eat. And they provide for our families, and traditionally the women stay home and process that meat and take care of children and take care of the house, stuff like that. And to me that work is very sacred and skilled and very essential, and it's how knowledge gets passed down. um with that structure, I've never seen a same-sex couple within my tribe or my village or my community, and not in our traditional stories growing up. And so when I started to understand myself more, the fear that set in was very immediate. I wasn't just afraid of being different from others, I was afraid of losing the very things that raised me, such as my culture and my family. I wondered if I would have to choose between being a traditional Gwitch-in or choosing to be my true self, which was absolutely devastating. Because for years I carried that weight very quietly. I thought that if I didn't say it out loud, that I could keep everyone comfortable and keep my place in peace. But the silence was very heavy, and it just got very lonely. And what I didn't know then is that I wasn't actually protecting anything by hiding my true self. I was just keeping myself from being fully known. But the turning point, for me, wasn't just one conversation. It was a slow accumulate. I don't even know how to say that word, accumulation of unconditional love received from the people who decided that I didn't need to earn my place in my community. It started with, my friends who responded to me with, "Okay, that doesn't change who you are. You're still you, and that's okay." And they said that with no conditions and no debates. I was actually talking to my mother yesterday, who I look up to for literally everything, because she's very traditional and she speaks our language very fluently. And I was talking to her about how being queer is, or I had asked her something about is being queer or being queer traditional, and she told me that, quote unquote, that she never had to prove that her heterosexuality was traditional, and so why should I have to prove that my homosexuality is traditional? And that really hit me super hard because she was right. We don't ask people to justify their existence when they fit the expectation. But what is traditional is love and respect, and that shouldn't be conditional on fitting a mold. And this perspective gave me permission to step into my life more fully. It allowed me to see that tradition isn't just about preserving roles exactly as they were then, because times are different now. It's also about passing on knowledge and making sure no one gets left outside the circle, because why would you want other people to feel left out? And right now, my aunt, Charlene Stern, she is the provost at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. She has last fall, I started asking her more like traditional questions about me being queer. And traditionally, women aren't supposed to go and hunt and shoot at caribou and do all of that. But she still taught me all of that because she doesn't want me to feel any different than any other people, because she still wanted to teach me, because it's good stuff to know and it's good knowledge to pass down when it's my turn to pass that knowledge down. Um, but yeah, I ask myself kind of on a daily, who am I today? And I can't answer that I'm someone who is here because I was loved without any conditions. And I overcame obstacles not through sheer force of will, but because I had support from peers who checked in on me, from family members such as my mother, who chose to listen and grow, and from mentors who opened doors instead of guarding them. My strength today comes from acceptance, both the acceptance I've received and the acceptance that I've learned to give myself, because it has been a journey to accept myself in a community. Um, just because if I feel ready to put myself out there, I will do it because I'm not scared to. But little me would be, because I was always scared of judgment. And because, like I said, growing up in a Christian household, I was always in church. And before I even came out publicly, I was always in church. I had all these Christian friends. And as soon as I came out, a lot of them decided not to be my friend anymore. I actually went to Bible college being queer, and a lot of them, after I came back from college, I started dating my partner, and all of them literally went like that in a snap of a finger. And like I said, acceptance was very hard to give myself because I didn't feel like I fit in. And so I lost a lot of friends, and I was like, I don't know how to make friends anymore. Um, and I share that because I know the fear is still very real for so many people. Experience the same thing that I did. Like there are youth part of the LGBTQ community in villages and cities who are doing the same math that I did and tell themselves, if I tell the truth, what will I lose? And honestly, you will lose a lot because, like I said, I lost a lot. But the people who truly love you will stay no matter what the circumstance is, and will learn to love you unconditionally no matter what lifestyle you live. And because that's just a true friend and a true family member. Because I was just talking to one of my friends that I met in Bible college yesterday, and she was very Christian, obviously, and was like, that's not what God intended, stuff like that, telling me Bible verses. But she still told me, you are still you, and you're still my sister in Christ. And that hit home because, I mean, it was a little hard because she was like, I don't support what you do, but I still love you anyway. And that's what I kind of long for. Because I was afraid of judgment from friends, my community, from my church, and etc. But that fear that you feel is super isolating, and it's honestly dangerous. Too many of us have learned to carry it alone, and we shouldn't have to feel like that anymore, because it is time to step up. Like if I were a parent to a child who was queer, I don't want them to tell me and not feel judged, because I would rather have a queer child than a dead one, because suicide is very real in our young LGBTQ individuals. But yeah, there's my little spiel.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Brother Jeremy, you're muted right now.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was just saying, Jana, thank you for that. I appreciate what you shared about just the challenge with self-acceptance. I think a lot of people don't really take that into account, just the effect that those things have on an individual. I think people are always entering into this realm, again, from a fear-based perspective, and always worried about how it's going to affect them in a way that it pushes them outside of their comfort zone. But to realize that it's not just about being accepted into the community and the environment, but it's, the pressure that it puts upon yourself to understand how it is that you fit into that. How do you find a space to belong when the environment isn't accepting, and it almost doesn't even allow you to accept yourself, being able to find placement. I think, from a cultural standpoint, it's interesting because I feel like what we're talking about is basic humanity. You know, colonization, places all of these labels, these divisive thought processes in place that makes us look at one another different. And it kind of incites that fear. Whereas, ultimately, like you said, I would rather have a queer child than a dead child. Like it's unfortunate that we have to even consider it in that context. That human life becomes so expendable based upon these foolish stereotypes and things. But when it really does come down to it, we really have to take a look at ourselves in the mirror, and regardless of what religion that we follow or what our principles are, if we don't have an ability to value human life, what are we really standing for? And I think especially as indigenous people in the culture that we represent, that's even more so to the point. It's one thing to, I think, even as an indigenous person, having to find acceptance in the totality of society. We're already kind of marginalized and displaced, but to add this added layer on that, even within our own communities, that we find that challenge of being accepted, that's even more of a travesty. And as indigenous communities, we truly do need to do better, because those teachings, just the basic teachings of humanity, of appreciating life and recognizing a gift to a gift, they sit right there at the core of all of our traditional teaching. So thank you for touching on that. Ricky, do you want to chime in on that as well?
Yeah. So I I grew up not really knowing who I was until I was a junior in high school. I've had relationships with the opposite sex for a couple of years, and then when I started to get into high school, that I was really, really confused of who I was, because like I said, I did have girlfriends, and then here all of a sudden I started thinking, I was uncomfortable with who I was, so I jumped the fence or experienced with the same sex. Still confused, as I went through high school, not knowing who, didn't really know what being being a homosexual really was, because I didn't have that kind of outlet growing up. I didn't know any of my other family members who were LGBT, so I didn't really have no kind of guidance in that aspect growing up. So when I was experiencing having relationship with both genders, that I realized that I wasn't trying to fool anybody. I was only fooling myself. So when I decided to come out to my mother, who I grew up in a single parent home, I came out to her at the end of my junior prom. We had the conversation. She asked me questions, and then I told her that I was bisexual, but I was raised to never lie to your mother. So minutes later, I was like, well, no, mom, I'm not bisexual. I was like, I'm gay. And then here she's like, well, she's like, a mother knows. And I was like, okay. And she's like, but it's like, you're my son. I'm gonna love you no matter what. Um, but you know, being her first gay child, we both had to grow from that, because growing up with siblings who were very in the athletic realm of high school. I've had a sister who played basketball. I had a brother who was the all-star in all sports in high school. We threw around um, some of the, I don't want to say derogatory terms, but that's how normal talk was. But we had to, my mother and I both had to learn how to navigate through this process of her and I. She wasn't comfortable when I was finally 18 years old and I had my first um, same-sex relationship, and asking to go and spend the evening with his family. She kind of was a little skeptic about it, but we've had many conversations when I went off to college, that she told me that if I'm gonna walk this life, that I have to grow tough skin, you know, because the world isn't gonna be as accepting, and it wasn't. And it wasn't even accepting in my community at the time. I was in high school from 2001 to 2004, where I was ridiculed by community members in the community, not just my peers, but adults, because I decided to join the cheerleading team. And I was the only male, and decades before, there was another male before me. So it was not the norm to see a boy standing on the sidelines um, cheering on the team with all the other females. So I got called the F word a lot walking to and from school. But my mom was always there, you know, at the game, cheering me on, you know, encouraging me, you know, and my brother and my sister were always there to help me, to guide me through that kind of thing. When people would talk about me or say things about me, they would be one of the first ones to say something. Um, but as I grew up, went off to college, and then I came home, and just when I started to find myself a little bit more, um, because I've had in my I've been home now for 16 years. I went off to college and I moved home. Um, I noticed a lot of changes in the community where I've seen a lot of students, a lot of younger people showing who they were, because of they weren't afraid. And I've had parents tell me also like, hey, I have one of my children just came out to me. What do I do? You know, and I decided to become that advocate in my community because they noticed how unapologetically I started living my life. And this was before I even became a drag entertainer. You know, I was finding myself in that realm of being trying to be that light for someone because I never had one. Um, so you know, I don't publicize who about being gay. Oh, hey, you know, hey guys, I'm gay. Are you gay? You know, I don't, you know, I live like how I live myself every day. You know, I do portray some, you know, feminine attributes, but that doesn't define who I really am as a person. Um, but other younger people see that and they're like, oh, then they come to me in private. I'm like, hey, Ricky, are you gay? Are you two spirit? Are you you know? And I'm like, um, being older, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I'm a member of the community, of course, you know. Or they're like, oh, what can I talk to you about something? And then that's how it started. And then I started living more um more outgoing. Then now I have my own students who come to me like, hey, I'm gay too. And I'm like, hey, cool. I was like, or he's like, oh my God, guess what? I talked to my mom last night and I told her that I like girls. I was, oh my God, I was like, and then she's like, how did she react to that? And she's like, you know, she said she loved me no matter what. And I was like, that's amazing. I was like, I'm glad. And then that same parent messaged me that day and was like, hey, I was like, my child just came on to me. What do I do? And usually my first response to that is, um, love them, love them no matter what. I was like, that's what my mom said to me. Is like, so that's the advice I'm going to say to you, you know, love them no matter what, because like what Jana said, you'd rather have a queer child than a dead child. Um, but and then I also approached some students whilst working in the school system. They were of a same-sex couple, and they got to go to prom together. And I was like, oh my God. And I went up to them, I was like, you guys are the pillar of what I wanted to do in high school, because I had a relationship and that was I had to very keep it discreet. And I had to um, tell my partner that, oh yeah, I tell them you're a her because not a lot of people know who I am. But seeing these younger students live freely inspired me to not want to be like that anymore. Um, and then here, I started being more open with them because they were so open with me. And um, I've taught my younger siblings who are, like I said, I have a bisexual brother, I have another gay brother, I have a trans sister. And I told him, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm gonna tell you the same thing mom told me. You are gonna have to have tough skin. People are gonna say things to you because the world is a very cruel place. Is like, and you have to take what people say with a grain of salt because they're gonna try to belittle you and try to tear you down as much as they can to make you feel like that you're not worth living. As like and my my siblings have breaking barriers with that, and my trans sister, she became the very first trans teenager to win prom queen at my school. And it was very, very well accepted. And she told me when I was at a show, because in support of who she was, our school is very supportive of our Two Spirit members. I dressed up in my alter ego and I walked with her during the grand march for prom. And that showed a lot of people in my community, a lot of students, that I showed them it's okay to be who you are. It's okay to express yourself, no matter the gender or no matter what you identify as. And I do that today, and I've been in the school system now for 16 years. And finally being that person that had to walk through the trenches and not being accepted in my community, and to find out that I am very well respected and accepted, gave that light to younger members of my community to be who they are. But I like I said, I wish I had somebody like me when I was growing up. But sometimes you have to be that first person. And I consider myself that first person in my community, where I have students now come to me when they need to talk. And so that was a little bit of what I went through, finding who I was. And I keep my alter ego and my career very separate. I try not to form them together, because I feel it's not my place to educate them about my alter ego when I feel it's the parent's duty to do that. Or if they want to have a meeting with me, and I do explain to them. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your courage to be that first person. That's an important point to make, I think, across the board, in understanding, what you went through as a child and not having someone to kind of lead the way. I know that there are a lot of other relatives like you that had to kind of pioneer that path, in our communities. And even still today, a lot of our communities are facing that struggle of acceptance and understanding, so the work that you do, just in being yourself, and the courage that it takes is tremendous, because it goes even beyond your own community. I think even in instances like this, where there are people who are going to have an opportunity to listen from elsewhere, and gain some perspective and be inspired by the motions that you've made, that just speaks to it. So thank you for that. Had a fortunate opportunity. We've got one of our other speakers was able to join us. Pretty Elk, Leha, you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, and then we'll move a question in your direction to get your perspective.
Okay. Hello, Nanana. My name is Leah Spoonunter. My feminine name is Camila Gomez. I'm a Native American youth advocate, Two Spirit activist, and as well as a drag performer. I'm from the Eastern Shoshone, Northern Arapaho, and Oglala Lakota tribes, and I've been doing this work for over 12 years now, and I tell you, it's some of the most rewarding work you ever get a chance to be a part of. To see our communities represented, and to know that we have a voice, um, and taking that opportunity to be leaders within our community, and knocking down barriers. When I came out, there was when I remember leading in unity, and there wasn't very many open at that time. But now, I mean, you go to a national unity conference, and there's a whole group of LGBTQI and Two Spirit youth that are there, and that's just breaking the ground. That's just making sure that your voice is represented. That our LGBTQI, Two Spirit, however you identify, non-binary, that you do matter in our society. And I was always taught that by my elders, is you hold a very special place in your community. So I wanted to share that.
Okay, well, thank you. Could you share, I guess, a little bit about, Ricky had kind of touched on it, and then you as well, just um, this work of kind of leading the way in kind of being an advocate for, your gender identity, but also, for youth that are, in this space. Um, what has your experience been like, over the past 12 years working in that capacity? How have you seen things change or um, improve, I guess I would say?
Yeah, like I said, when I first came out, my community, or a community near me, Lander, Wyoming, had their first ever Pride picnic. And to see it go from a picnic to a whole month of activities, because it started out just as a picnic, and now it's incorporated into movies, it's incorporated into storytelling, into drag shows, um, making sure that our voice is represented. I mean, um, I know when I first came out, I had to face family who weren't accepting, who weren't approving of the person that I am. And the fact that, you know, how in the world can you be Two Spirit? How in the world can you be, call yourself this? None of our family has ever had this in our bloodline. When in reality, many of my cousins, many of my relatives identify within the community. But, I always seen it that you have to be a trendsetter. You have to be willing to step into the realm where you have to be willing to speak up and not allow yourself to be dictated to. And I feel like in my journey, definitely my journey has not been an easy one because I had to struggle with family who didn't accept me, and I had to struggle with a brother who's very religious, very into the Bible, and that my identity is not is not what God wanted me to be. But knowing that, hey, I have these LGBTQI youth that I have to be a voice for, because one of the things that I always said is that our youth are unique. Our native youth have so much potential and so much to give. And that's why when I came out, I wanted to work with the youth. I wanted to be specifically a youth advocate, an LGBTQI youth advocate, because I wanted to be able to give them a space. And so at Unity for the past 6 to 7 years, I've held a safe space workshop every single year. I've had a safe space, and because of the reason, I've had so many advisors and people come up to me and go, "We're so thankful you did this because our youth didn't know if they had a place here." And that's how I felt when I first got to Unities. I didn't know if my queer identity would be accepted, and at the time that I was really in Unity, um, a lot of people were doing suicide prevention, mascots, and I wanted my work to be specifically on Two Spirit and LGBTQI issues. And, I never thought that doing this advocacy would bring me to the White House in 2016, to be able to go to the White House Pride reception and to hear President Obama say the words Two Spirit and why they selected me to even be in a space like that. These are people who created the pride flag, people who helped launch marriage equality, Jazz Jennings, people like that. And you're able to be at a place like that. But for me, those things are good, but what I can do to help my own communities and what I can do to um, see Native youth succeed. Because, last year was really hard. The past 1 to 2 years ago was really hard when we lost Nix, you know, for me. And I, like I said, I live in Wyoming. So 4 hours from me, of course, is where Matthew Shepard was killed.
Mm.
And that lives within us every year. As we celebrate Pride Month, I always think about, we have Pride celebrations in rural Wyoming, conservative Wyoming, in 10
Mm-hmm.
different towns. But I always go back and go, what would it look like if Matt was here? You know,
Yeah.
you know, and that he never got to experience that. And for me, it's always been about, this year I finally get to the point to where I'm not afraid to wear makeup at work. I'm not afraid to wear heels at work. I'm not afraid to wear feminine clothing at work. I work in a casino setting, and I show that
Mm-hmm.
for so many years, even up until this year, my I tried to kind of like share a part of who I am, but not fully make it public. But this year I was just like, I'm not ashamed anymore. I can't
Mm.
be ashamed. I can't be afraid because there's a youth right there who's seeing that.
Yeah.
You're not afraid. You're not afraid, just like previous speaker was talking about. this to see our young people now be queens at prom, to see a trans individual be able to dress as they feel. And it took a lot of work to get there, but and I want to share a couple of 3 years ago, we had a drag show, and it was protested by the Patriot Front group. And to see white supremacists and to know that a lot of our drag queen performers that night were indigenous performers, and having to were Two Spirit performers, and so being able to face those head on and say, you know what, you can protest all you want, we're still going to be here, we're still going to be queer, we're still going to show out in 2026 in rural Wyoming. We're not going to be afraid, and we're going to be unapologetic. And that's kind of the realm that I'm living in now, is I have to be unapologetic. I have to be fierce, because just by you being fierce and just by you being unapologetic to be yourself, that could save a youth life. That could allow them to show that, to not be afraid of who you are.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that. As I'm hearing everybody share their perspective, one of the things that I hear is an undertone that's being communicated that I think is a common misconception from the outside, is that people think that it's a choice in terms of what your gender identity is, or that it's something that is either influenced or even people, and I hate to say this, but almost kind of look at it as if it's some type of disease, in a way, like it's something contagious. I remember growing up, that's the way that, peers would tease, you know what I mean? As if it was something that could happen to you. But being able to understand that this is inherent in you, being able to know these things from a very young age, that it wasn't something that, you necessarily grew into or were influenced to, but it was naturally a part of your DNA type of situation. I think that's important for people to understand, and especially in the work that you're doing, in terms of youth advocacy, for that to be communicated, because I know that's one of the challenges that they come up against is for the people that it makes uncomfortable, that's always extended to be able to say, well, this is what you're choosing. Why should I have to bend and make room for you, because you're choosing something outside of the norm, type of thing. But being able to understand that this is a natural existence, and there again, kind of going back to our humanity. But I guess with that being said, I want to, kind of pose the question here, because we are kind of getting close to the end of our time here. And if we need to go over a little bit, I'm okay with that, if you all are. But I don't want to keep everybody too long. I know we all have schedules and things. But what I wanted to ask is, what is it that we can do as communities collectively to do better about creating safe space for our Two Spirit LGBTQ plus relatives? Let's see here. Let's give that to Jenna.
I was like, I wonder if he's gonna say my name. Honestly, from my perspective, first, I would lead with respect. The principle is very simple and timeless. I would treat others how I would like to be treated. If you want your family and your relationship and your identity to be honored, then extend that same honor to someone else, even if their life looks a little different from yours, because respect is the foundation and we are all capable of building on it. Secondly, we expand what people see as possible. Representation matters because you cannot be what you cannot see. When we are visible, when we talk about our partners, when we bring our whole selves to work and to family dinners, we make a path a little easier for the next person, and we just make normal bigger. than it is now. Third, we choose love over fear consistently. Judgment is a very quick reaction, and love is a practice because it means asking questions instead of making assumptions. And it means saying, I may not fully understand your experience, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. That's what I wanted to hear growing up. And that's what my mom told me when I came out to her for the first time. She's like, I may not support what you're doing, but I'm not going to stop loving you. I'm going to love you no matter what because I'm her baby. I'm her youngest. And love covers all when we decide to let it. If I'm speaking honestly, there's no reason for you to treat your family or friend with disrespect just because their life is different from yours. And as harsh as it sounds, it's their life and it's not your life to control. And finally, we remind people that they do not have to prove their worthiness. You do not need a perfect coming out story to deserve the safety. You do not need to be an activist to deserve dignity. You just need to justify your existence with traditions, with scripture. Or no, you do not need to, sorry, you do not need to justify your existence with traditions, with scripture, or with anyone else's approval, because you belong, and we can just fully stop there. And personally, I'm standing here because people chose acceptance over fear, because I know that my mom did, my friends did, my aunt did, or does every time she teaches me something new. And because all of that, my girlfriend and I get to build a life together. Oh my gosh, together in peace, knowing we are accepted by those that we love. I feel like her mom is my best friend because her mom loves her no matter what, and she's best friends with my mom, obviously, because they're best friends, and I just feel left out sometimes when they talk. But this is not a rejection where I come from. It's a continuation of the deepest teaching that I was given, that we take care of each other. And for those in here who know me and who have been to my village, you know that Arctic Village and our tribe, we are very hospitality thrived. And like we thrive on hospitality, and we all take care of each other before we all take care of ourselves. But yeah, like I said, respect and love is pretty much my motto when it comes to this kind of sensitive topic.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. Ricky, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, just your perspective on what it is that we can do collectively as communities to do better about creating safe space for Two Spirit and LGBTQ relatives.
I think that to providing safe spaces is you just have to understand the person that's coming to you. You know, because for them it. Sorry, my nephew's running in now. Sorry, I have my sister and my nieces and my nephew all in the living room.
Oh, no worries.
But back to what I was saying, I think that it takes a lot for the one person looking for a safe space. It takes a lot for them to go and find it. To find that one someone that they can trust, you know. And for me, I like I said before, growing up, I didn't have that. But I tried to make that known in the school where I tell them all the time. I was like, if you ever need anything, I was like, come and talk to me. You know, I was like, everything that you say to me, I was like, will stay with me. I was like, I will not tell anybody. It's just more of I want you to feel comfortable with who you are. And I always tell them, I was like, to know, you know, you came to me as like, and you're trusting me with everything. I was like, with something important, I was like, I'm gonna do everything I can. I was like to give you my 100% attention. And I noticed that there are other people who work in the school where I work that they're not Native American, but they do provide safe spaces for our children that need it. and it's very appreciative. And and we in my other tribe, the Winnebago tribe, they just recently started a Two Spirit organization where they have activities within the community where they're able to, come together, um, do arts and crafts, go on some outings. And I do believe that they may be going to a Two Spirit Powell coming up soon, but I can't remember where. Um, but that's I kind of wish that we would be do it down here because like I said, I live 10 miles from my other reservation that I'm from. But just trying to figure out how to get things like that started. But um, I think it would be a good thing to have, not just for LGBT, but to any of our youth, because our youth kind of go through a lot mentally, with drugs and alcohol, mental health issues, all of that. So I think that kind of like goes through not just for um, LGBT, but safe spaces in general for everyone in our community. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Um, we've kind of gone over our time here a little bit, but I want to pass it back to Leha, Camila. If you want to take a moment to kind of share maybe just some thoughts that you could extend to other Two-Spirit LGBTQ relatives, whether they be youth or adults that are trying to find a way in this life, whether that be looking for acceptance in society and community, or even self-acceptance and being able to facilitate a good life for themselves. Oh, I think you're muted. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Like everyone said, finding that community with, finding people who will value and embrace you and respect your role in our communities. Knowing that your identity is something that is spiritual and that is cultural, and that, our Two Spirit relatives played a very integral role in our tribes, and they continue to do so. And I always say this to people who come to me. One of the things that I pride myself at being is that person they can come to for a safe space from family, and um, finding that individual who will provide that for you. Who, for me, it's my sister Hope. And she allows me to wear makeup, no matter what. She does my fingernails, paints my nails, she does my makeup, she helps me to shop. And, finding people like that who will, because we can always find those people who will demean us and criticize us and not respect our identity. But finding those people in our community who will say that, we understand where you're coming from. But like, Jana talked about, having that respect, having that respect for one another, is a value that our all of our nations teaches. And knowing that as a Two Spirit person, you do have value. You do have that, you do have a space within our tribal communities. And knowing that representation is starting to grow, even in this turbulent political time sometimes, you know, we still have to be unafraid to be ourselves. I know it's easier said than done, and I think, one of the things that I share is that, when colonization happened, that the Two Spirit community was amongst the first to be attacked. But our warriors and our chiefs saw fit to protect us at that time. And I feel like having that history, knowing, joining a Two Spirit group or finding Two Spirit, other Two Spirit organizations, or other Two Spirit advocates and allies. And, there, when I came out, I didn't realize how many, um, actually relatives that I had, who were willing to share their knowledge with me, who were willing to share, when we as a Two Spirit person, you've got to hold yourself to a higher standard. One of the elders told me, and that's when I pick the clothes that I wear. I try to know that I'm representing my people, I'm representing my family, I'm representing my community. And I feel like, you know, it's it's not, you may feel afraid to come out, but know that there's going to be a community that embraces you, you know, but you can come out at your own time whenever you feel, nobody should force you to express who you are right away. That's something, that's your journey. And that's something that I always share with these young people when I talk with them is, you came to me, you were honest with me about who you are. And in that room that the workshop space that I do at Unity, it's not leaving this room. And that's one of the things that I teach in that room is whatever is taught here, whatever is said here, you don't walk out these doors, because people have been vulnerable to share that part of themselves. And so knowing that, choose that love will conquer hate every day. No matter if you face prejudice or discrimination or homophobia or transphobia, that love is always going to shine through. That rainbow is always going to be the brightest. And that's what I feel, and that's what I live my life by, is that, I may have that one person, who will be mean, but I will have a community behind me and ancestors behind me who will guide you through it, and know not to be afraid. So.
Okay, thank you. Um, you know, uh, as I'm kind of processing all of this, it brings to mind, in one of my other companies that I facilitate, we had been facilitating this dialogue a few years back, of contribution over color is what we called it. And it was centered around, bringing awareness to just this colonized idea of internalized racism within indigenous communities. Whereas, we begin to judge one another based on skin color or whether we come from the res or from the city type thing. But being able to really take a look at what is more in alignment with our values as indigenous people, and understanding that we come from a culture of contribution. Being able to understand in our traditional communities, it required the input, the contribution, and the reciprocity of everybody involved. And that's where your values sat. It was never a thing of skin color, things of that nature. And many of our tribes have this understanding that in more traditional times, sometimes we would adopt in relatives that were maybe non-native or from another tribe, and once that adoption was made, there was no question as to whether they belonged with the people or not. And it's unfortunate that we've come to a time where our Two Spirit relatives and LGBTQ relatives have been excluded from that. But I think it kind of brings us back to that point to recognize, as I'm hearing all of the work and the advocacy that all of you have done, and the courage that you step forward as warriors for yourselves, and for other relatives in the communities, the way that you've paved a way to me, that contribution speaks volumes, and in more so than many of our community members that sit back and criticize and have negative things to say or choose to react in fear. What I'm seeing exemplified here is that power of contribution and that embodiment of the truth of the values that we stand for. So that being said, I want to commend each and every one of you, and I'm honored to be able to share this space with you today and to hear your perspective. I've learned a lot in this, and you've really blessed us all with some insight. I'm really grateful. I apologize. My colleague had to leave a little bit early. Like I said, I know we went over a little bit over time, and I wish we could keep going. There's so many other questions that I want to ask. So I think in the near future we may revisit this if you all are open to it, and I'll reach out because I know even just as a result of this conversation, it's opened my mind to other things that I know other people need to come to an understanding of, and I know that you all encompass a vast array of experiences that we could all tremendously learn from. So, but that being said, thank you all for joining us, and I hope that each of you are blessed for your contribution here. That your life and your livelihood are blessed, your families are blessed, and your communities as well. And thank you again, and we'll be in touch after this, and hopefully we can come together once again. So, if any of you have any quick closing thoughts, I'll open the floor, and if not, then we can say goodbye and sign off. So.
I just want to say thank you for inviting me. Sorry that I showed up late, but I'm grateful, and I definitely want to continue this conversation. And for my fellow relatives that spoke, I'm in awe of your grace and your beauty and your willingness to just share that aspect of yourself. And I just want to say, oh, my relatives.
Thank you. Okay. All right. If nobody has anything else that they want to add, again, we'll be in touch, and you guys have a blessed rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.